Welcome and good evening to you in America. Thanks for coming on and joining us for a chat about interoception, ready for our brunch next month. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I always love talking about interoception, so anytime.
Yeah, I actually wondered, how did you begin to specialize or get that passion, that interest for interoception? It's quite specific.
It is very specific, and I never thought I'd have such a specific interest. But it was actually with one of my colleagues and friends, Dr. Brenda Smith-Miles. She asked me to revise a book that she had written, and we were doing the second edition. It was all about sensory processing and autism, and this was many, many years ago. And through writing that revision on that book, I started reading a lot of research on this sense called interoception. And at that point, I had only heard the word interoception before, but I honestly thought it was like this toileting thing. And through reading all the research, I was like, oh my goodness, like interoception is so much more than toileting. It influences so many aspects of our lives. And from that point forward, I was completely hooked and pretty much obsessed. And I've, read as much as I could get my hands on about the topic, and the rest is history.
And you've gone on to look into research, and you've written, obviously, your curriculum. You've got, which we can talk about and share in our brunch. But it's funny you talk about the toileting thing, because I think that was my experience, and many OTs' experience of interoception is you come across the term in connection to toileting or feeding. Sleep wake's a really big one. So then you start exploring interoception as being our internal rhythms and cycles. But a lot of your work is around interoception in connection to emotion regulation. So could you share a little bit about your thoughts on that and your perspective on that?
Yeah, like even as a baby OT 20 years ago, I've always been like super interested in mental health and emotion regulation. And I was trying like so many different curriculum and approaches, and, my clients would make gains, but you always had that feeling maybe sometimes that something is missing. And interoception for many of my clients is that thing that's missing. Interoception, allows us to feel so many different internal body sensations, and it's the way our body feels that informs the emotion that we're experiencing. And so you have to be able to clearly understand and identify what emotion you're experiencing in order to take that next step, in order to know what to do next to help care for your emotional and your bodily needs. So interoception, if you're really struggling to notice your interoceptive signals, or maybe you're noticing but you don't understand exactly what they mean, it's really then you don't have a solid foundation to be able to get to that place of self-regulation that OTs talk about a lot. Most of my clients were still back in that place of co-regulation and relying on people, surrounding them to help them to regulate their needs.
And talking about that needing external reinforcement or external guidance, what does that do to your sense of self? I guess that whole, perspective of I am me and having that sense of being. What does that do to that?
Yeah, like if you're relying on the caregivers surrounding you, like in so many of my clients, as they grow, they're very bright. They begin to understand that, they're trying so hard to get to that place of self-regulation. But without that interoceptive piece, sometimes they fall short and they're relying on those caregivers. And so their sense of self either doesn't fully develop as an independent sense of self, or their sense of self is derailed, and their sense of self becomes like, I am dependent on others, or even worse, like I'm a failure. I'm trying so hard, I just can't get it right, kind of thing. So it really affects that sense of self in so many different ways.
And I ask that because so many of the kids that we work with, particularly as they get older, start to have that internal voice of I'm not good enough, I'm and then almost give up, I'm not able. I hear so many self-esteem things that come up from that perception. I guess it's that interconnection between what we sense and how we feel that rhythm between the two that influences that, and if that's disconnected. So it makes so much sense. I guess what causes people to have interoceptive difficulties? I'm sure there are many.
Yeah, I don't know if the research is clear on that yet. And that's kind of like the cool part and the drawback of interoception. Like it's really the whole field is in its infancy compared to all of our other senses. But from 2002, when Dr. Bud Craig, he was really the modern father of interoception. He started studying interoception in his lab. Since 2002, the interoception research has just exploded. But really, we don't know a lot about interoception, especially in early childhood and infancy. How does it develop? What are the milestones? Like we don't have any like really clear-cut information about that yet. And, there's some hypotheses out there. I think that you can have organic causes where your interoceptive system is derailed, maybe just by neurodiversity or neurological differences, brain differences. But then also we know that there could be we know that there are environmental causes too. So trauma is a huge area of research in interoception right now, and looking at trauma experiences and how that derails your interoceptive experience. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how the research plays out over the next 5-10 years. I think we're going to learn a lot more about interoception and what can cause interoceptive differences.
It's actually, I think trauma as a topic or as an area is growing all of the time. And the more layers that get unpeeled, the more we start to realize that interconnection. So when you mentioned that about the research and how much is going on, that's so exciting, because trauma is just such a big issue. And for the children that we work with, it's prevalent. So and maybe we could explore it a bit more in our brunch as well, a little bit around the trauma piece, and see how that evolves. But yeah, I guess we see mindfulness. It's a pretty general term that gets thrown. It's a buzzword. It gets thrown around. You see toys come out now for mindfulness for kids, and it's a really big theme. And we see it talked about in the treatment of interoceptive difficulties. What's your thought on mindfulness and using that as a treatment strategy?
Well, I know that mindfulness is the only evidence-based intervention right now in research shown to improve interoceptive awareness. So I think that as OTs, we need to hold fast to what evidence tells us. But my thoughts on mindfulness, especially as a clinician, is that it has so many different benefits, including improvement in interoceptive awareness. However, mindfulness needs to be adapted and carefully thought about, and how to make it successful and accessible to a wider variety of learners. There's a lot of drawbacks to mindfulness. It's really abstract, and it assumes that a person has a safe relationship with their internal sensations. And that is not true for a lot of our clients. So we really need to think very critically about how we're using mindfulness. And that's really what all of our interoception-based strategies are all about, is adapted forms of mindfulness.
Because I guess sometimes you can bring up a topic with a child and they're so not ready to even talk about a topic, or you can, even if you're drawing awareness, they can shut that down pretty quickly. So there's almost like a pre-mindfulness place for kids that you need to work through. And I guess that's why I talked about it as being this buzz word. Is I agree with you. It's obviously it's what the evidence supports, but I think that one size fits all of getting the mindfulness game out, or toys out, or not toys, but activity isn't. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of cognition then comes into teaching mindfulness. And so that was where I guess I was going to ask you as a final thing, is around some of the cognitive strategies that are taught, are used to teach, not so much just mindfulness, but toileting, social stories around sleeping. There's a lot of cognitive interventions get laid into the OT work. And not to start a war between cognitive and sensory based or whatever, but just to hear your perspective on that, because they tend to be, I'm not sure if it's the same for the States, but here, cognitive interventions for this type of thing is really common. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on it in a nice way.
Yeah. I think, well, the way I systemize it in my head is that this work is like in 3 different levels. And at level 1, you're in co-regulation. You're just helping that client to feel safe, to feel regulated, doing lots of our sensory-based work. Then you get to level 2, and that's where you help someone to start to become more curious about their inner sensations, learn more about noticing their inner sensations, learning about what those sensations mean for them. And then you get to level 3, and that's the cognitive work. And so when we're just at level 3, we're missing so much of the foundation that these kids need to even be ready for the cognitive strategies. And that is why the cognitive strategies many times fall short, because we are going too far forward. The kids are not ready for it, and the adults are not ready for it. I had an adult client, and she gave me this analogy that I really liked, but she said the cognitive strategies are like giving her a DVD without checking if her DVD player is working first. And I really loved that analogy. Like, it's so true. Like, you need to rewind and make sure that a person is like really understanding themselves and their internal sensations and emotions before they're ready to like really rationalize about it.
And that co-regulation piece can take forever. Like, we can rely on co-regulation for such a long time and may not be ready for some of those steps. And I guess that's what I kind of wanted to touch on today, was just that idea that that there are other stages that wire into all of these I guess treatment strategies that we're using, and it's not a one size fits all. And how do we, I guess, assess and then work out what the best fit is for the kids that we're working with, or adults if in that case as well. So thank you. I think that's so amazing to answer some of those questions and clear some of that up, because I think so many OTs would be in the same situation as yourself and me when we first heard that kind of key term about interoception being around sleep and toileting, and then unraveling and realizing just how much more it is to just do with our being and our existence. So thank you so much for coming and talking today with us about that.
Yes, my pleasure. I can't wait to talk more at our brunch.
Me too. I just some of the things you said today has just sparked my interest around some of the things we could be talking about. So really grateful, Kelly. Thanks again, and I'll see you next month.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.